I've been head of digital for a few years in a variety of organizations, and kind of came across similar issues wherever I was, also depending on the organization I worked for. So I either had a situation where I had to drag an organization into digital, and they were like kicking and screaming, not wanting to do it, or I had to manage an amazing enthusiasm which was coming from the top. So you have to kind of deal with essentially a change management as a person who is essentially a little bit geeky and kind of can manage kind of peers and stakeholders, but you have to influence upwards as well. So I thought it was a really good thing that we get together and start talking about these issues a bit more, because more and more of us who started off as digital campaigners or digital managers have kind of ended up in this middle management position. Where we actually have to influence up, sideways, down, up, in all ways, but don't necessarily have the skills. So what I'm talking about today is what I've spent doing in my kind of last 2 jobs. I've been working on digital strategies. In my last, in Whisper, I've been working on a global digital strategy. And there are some things that I came across, so I hope it's going to be what I'm talking about is going to be relevant to people, not just for international organizations, but also for UK-based organizations. Because what I'm talking about are essentially, it's a kind of digital framework, how you identify gaps that you need to fill in terms of digital in your organization, how you go about it, like the process, what are all the things you need to consider when you're trying to develop a digital strategy. Just so you know, if there is loads of cats all the way throughout, which is a very important thing. So if you get bored, just look at the cat, and you should perk up. So what I'm going through today is develop a global digital strategy, and I'm going to start. I mean, also bear in mind that this presentation is just basically a little bit more focused than just a brain dump, but it's basically just a kind of my thoughts based on the experience I had, and it is really aimed at starting a discussion, getting you to have a think, and just kind of challenge it, because this is just based on my experience. What I found developing the global digital strategy is that there is loads of theory, and it was very fun, really, to kind of do some myth busting. So that's what I want to kind of start off with, and it would be interesting to hear your reactions to that. And then basically some challenges around developing digital strategy, and then takeaways and comments and questions. And as I say, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on that. So when I started looking at global digital strategy, I've spoken to, so I did start doing it for WSPA, but I actually have spoken to other international organizations as well. And there is kind of some commonality in what I've heard. And this is basically what I've heard both from digital people, but also from senior management. There is this assumption that because you're on the internet, there are no borders, and we're all, you can have a global movement, and you can have a global impact and have a global campaign. Then together we're stronger than one. We can learn from each other and want to repeat same mistakes. So together, as in like if you're an international organization, you have 15 offices around the world. If we exchange information, exchange experience, exchange data, we are going to be stronger. We are going to be better. We can share technology solutions and skills. It's more cost effective, so we can all get on one platform and use it together, and that's going to be cheaper. It's going to be more effective. Again, we can share technical knowledge across borders. Who takes care of orphan supporters? We call it orphan. I'm not sure if that's the case in other international organizations, but as an because there is this assumption of international, it means that many people are coming onto your email list who are not from the countries where you have an office. So the thinking behind the orphan supporters is that someone needs to take care of them, someone needs to manage their journeys, someone needs to manage their interaction with the organization. So who does that? So usually it's a headquarters or international secretariat or whatever the structure of the international organization is. And then we need to have a brand consistency globally. So we need to look like as one organization across the board, wherever we are. So what I've started doing is like, right, let's just move from theory to actually practice and investigate what this actually looks like. So what I find interesting about all those statements is that they're very organization-centric. So they're talking, that is organizations navel-gazing and thinking about themselves and what they would really like to see. And a lot of it is based on people who are in the organization, so what people want to do. So a lot of people in international secretariats, which is where I am, are coming from UK, for example, UK or like a country-based organization that does fundraising and campaigning, and they want to get their hands dirty, they want to just get in there, which isn't necessarily what is required in that position, and I'll talk about that a bit more. So I just thought, actually, let's do some myth busting with data and actually really think about these things properly. No borders, with the help of the internet, we're all together and there's global campaigns and all that kind of stuff. Actually, you do have language limitations, number one. So this is probably a challenge for English language. But for all the other languages, it's pretty like mostly, if it's Danish, then it's going to be in Denmark. There is issues around the access to the internet, obviously, so you do have so-called digital divide, which is and how people are interacting with digital. So in Africa it's mostly going to be mobile, and at the moment it's mostly social media, and it's still not massive, while in the north, in kind of America, US, UK, Australia, it is much more. So basically the use of the internet per market is very different, both in terms of access, devices, and how people do it. So there isn't one size fits all, really. And also there are kind of market specifics. When you're searching something from Google in the UK, you're getting different results than when you're searching in the Google in the US. So there is, and this, according to Google, is going to change even more. So they are personalizing and specifying. So they're putting search results based on your search history from before. So it is actually, which is one of the challenges of this kind of new personalization movement, that your world is becoming less and less challenging. It's much more informed by what you like and what you do anyway. So so that's actually kind of, I question how correct that is. There are obviously opportunities, but so together we're stronger than one. We can learn from each other and won't repeat the same mistakes. So yes, in theory, and it would be nice if it worked like that. But actually, what I learned is that in order to get a digital buy-in, you really need to get the buy-in cross-organizationally, and even if the organization is 15 people. So whether we're talking 15 or 300, you still need to get the organization buy-in, because otherwise it feels like it's being done to you, it's been done to the organization, not with the organization. And that the strategy is not specific enough to address my issues, and my issue is with that team and with the way they do X, Y, and Z. So you do need to you need to kind of delve into the detail of that kind of stuff, and having one strategy for 15 offices across the world in 15 different markets is never going to work. We can share technology solutions and skills, it's more cost effective. The level of flexibility, so this is what I've learned in a number of roles, but in Whisper definitely it rings true. The level of flexibility that you need to develop for one system so that it works for everyone in the way they want it to work and the way the local market works is actually so expensive that it's probably much better to just get people to implement their own local solutions. And the reason, so one of the biggest challenges, so we have centralized system in Whisper, and the strategy I've developed is recommending decentralization. And that is because a lot of these countries are different in terms of markets, in terms of kind of digital support that they can get locally. So at the moment they're reliant on us in the UK who are working 9 to 5 UK hours. So if you're in Australia needing some support on technology, you have to wait for like 48 hours to actually get anything, which is incredibly frustrating. And the other thing is, I've noticed, for example, websites in Latin America would never work in Europe. You would never make a website like that in Europe, but that is what they look like there. So that you have to be responsive to the market. You have to kind of do something that rings true to the market, to the people in the market you're talking to. So who takes care of the orphan supporters? I know that I've had a chat with a few other international organizations around this. So there was this whole myth, based on this myth, we had the whole website which was talking to these people. But actually when I came in and said, well, who is actually our audience? So who are these people? So there was like, oh, well, it's people who are not in the other websites. So how do they find us? Well, they find us through search. It's like, well, why would they even search for us? So it's like when you start thinking about the journey that someone would take to land on that website, it's a bit iffy. It doesn't really work. I don't really understand why people would be there. And also, so I was saying, okay, why don't we do it better? And then it dawned on me that actually it probably would be better to first verify how many of people that we have on our lists are actually these orphan supporters. And it turned out the number was absolutely tiny. So then the question is, do you really want to invest in the whole digital team for this tiny audience when actually 98% of what you're doing is struggling? So, you know, where you have digital presence in country, shouldn't you put money into that and get that working? Don't worry about orphan supporters until you've sorted out the supporters where you actually have country presence. And then there is this thing about we will have brand consistency globally. And brand is really important, and we will go through that. There is something that brand can really contribute to development, to organization that is trying to grow. But in terms of what it looks like, so I had a chat with my brand person. It's like, yeah, when you go from like UK website to Netherlands website, we can't have like those websites looking totally different. I was like, why not? So, well, because, you know, we are all the same brand. It's like, so why not? If the website looks different but it's on brand, why does it have to look the same? And it is, and I think that is a total myth of the international headquarters, because we are the only people who would be jumping from a Netherlands website to a Danish website to a Swedish website. No one, I mean, only very, very small percentage of audience will actually do that. Most of the people will just go to their country website because they either saw a TV ad, they saw something in the papers, or they clicked on a link on a Facebook or on Twitter. So so brand is important, but it doesn't all have to look the same. It just needs to be on brand, so it needs to feel like the same organization is talking. Then the approach that I took in terms of building digital strategies. So actually, we've decided it's not going to be a strategy; it's going to be a framework. And the reason why it's for all these reasons. So it needs to be a living document that brings order to chaos over a number of years. Because there are a few things about strategies. A lot of the times there are these lovely documents that sit on someone's desk. They're basically written, signed off, and never looked at again. The other problem with strategies that are written that way is that they do go out of date very quickly, especially in digital, because things change so quickly. So you do need to kind of zoom out and make it more of a framework, so that when new stuff comes in, you can just fit it in, slot it into your kind of overall approach. So as I say, it's not a strategy; it's an approach. It's not just a document; it's a leadership, and that's this whole point of having a document that's sitting somewhere in a corner and that's kind of signed off is not really going to work, because you really need leadership. You need people to be behind it and to want to implement it. And that's why it's not just the leadership of like a digital person who is leading and pushing this forward. It's actually a leadership and a buy of people who need to implement this. So it's a buy-in that you get from the teams in all the different offices, in all the different teams within the organization. They need to buy into this and understand this, and that is the way to bring it to life. And then, as I said, not done to an organization, but done with it. I worked on this strategy with a consultant, but I worked with him. So the strategy is something that we wrote together. And it's really important, I mean, because he said to me, I never come into an organization and do a strategy if there isn't a digital, like senior digital person that I can work with, because otherwise it's just going to be a waste of time. It's not going to work. Someone needs to be there who's going to champion it and kind of get people on board with every stage of the strategy we're writing. So what we did is, I got him in to do interviews with my main stakeholders across the network, and I've done this both in Save the Children and in WISPA, where we spoke to the most important people in the organization who were kind of representing their teams, to get their view on what's working, what's not working, what's the strategy of the organization, how do you think digital can support that strategy and support what you're trying to do. And based on that, we've kind of had a good list of issues that the organization saw as something that needs to be addressed. and then kind of put the framework around it in terms of and steps in terms of how we can resolve it and how we can move on. So talking of chaos, there is a lot of chaos in digital. So it is, this is from 2005 description of Web 2.0, and what I found very interesting, that you can have a look in the detail of it, but what I find interesting about it is that only this bubble is about the technology. All this rest of the stuff is about behaviors, brands, interactions, consumerism. This is another one, which was done by a planner who was trying to make sense out of social media and like all the new things that are happening out there. And yeah, it's chaos. On top of all that is you're a digital person, and your job on a daily basis looks like this. Basically, everyone's pulling you in 10 different directions and trying to get your attention and say that their thing is the most important thing, and you really need to give them attention, etc., etc. So it is a kind of pretty chaotic life you have to live as a digital person. So what you need to maximize the potential of digital. So this is the framework. So how do you make sense out of the mess? How you put the structure on the mess so that you can take people with you and you can create change. So I've used this as a kind of usual metaphor of building a house and kind of roof and foundations and all that blah. But it's not digital for digital's sake, it's about organizational vision, and you need to really understand what is the organization trying to achieve. And then you identify how digital can support that vision, and because obviously digital can't help everything that the organization is trying to do. So it's really important to find the focus and say, this area of your strategy is where digital can really make a change. Brand is really important because it does give you the tone and style, and it gives you the, especially from digital point of view, ability to integrate. And I talk to people a lot about integration between campaigning and fundraising. I think I actually spoke here 2 years ago about it. So it's like a constant theme. And brand is a really useful tool which can help bridge the gap between the two and help integration. So going into digital vision, how can digital support the organizational vision? And then you do a little bit of an internal and external analysis. So internal analysis is what I said. You speak to your stakeholders and you use their words to identify what the issues in the organization are and what they think, what are the pain points, what they think is wrong with how digital is working and what they think needs to happen. And then what do you need to maximize on this potential of digital? So from the organizational vision, you get to the point of like, this is where digital can help and this is what's not working. And then you need to look at these three areas as a kind of, basically I call them like buckets, which you just need to fill in with content, which is around processes like planning and evaluation, systems, which is around data and content, and staffing, so structure, skills and training. And then obviously the bottom line is timeline and budget. So I'll talk you through these things, but I'll first show you the, so this is, I'm very proud of this. This is my Whisper Digital strategy in one slide. So this is it. So I'm just showing it to you so I can illustrate the house. So the vision, this is like a digital vision, which is, as a vision of the organization, we do have a vision which is around change for animals. So digital vision is to work together as an international organization to maximize the opportunities for digital engagement that help us bring about the change for animals. As with every vision statement, each one of these words is pretty loaded. So when we talk about maximizing, when we talk about digital engagement, working together, etc., etc., so all those bits are that bit of the internal external analysis. And then we came up with two guiding strategic principles, and actually in this strategy they're really important because they are giving the direction to the whole organization on everything digital, which is, the first one is we work together to build our presence as one global brand, so it is that kind of glue that surrounds everything we do. And the other one is local action, global impact. So we are going to invest, we're committed to build up local capacity digitally, digital local capacity, in order to ensure global impact, because the aggregated impact of all the local actions globally is what's going to create change. And that created these two strands of, so these two things are specific to WISPA, and it created the two strands of strategy implementation. One which is, because we as WISPA International, as a secretariat, as a headquarters, whatever the term your organization uses, we're mostly the team that is basically just supporting people to do their stuff, because most of the people in the offices are really not digital specialists. Most of them have been taught how to upload an article to a website, and that is as far as their knowledge goes. So a lot of the time we were doing 24/7 support. Sometimes we had to, so it was kind of, this whole idea of cost saving was prioritized over quality and actually growing the digital activity. So what we said is, and also in response to this whole question, who is the audience for WISPA International website? Who are actually these people who are coming in? Because the number of people who are the orphans, as I defined them before, is so small, we actually said, well, what would be much more logical and more fitting the strategy, which is that we want to become kind of leaders and opinion formers, is that we turned the WISPA International website into a stakeholder-facing website, so in a kind of policy type of website, more like a think tank than a consumer-facing website. So instead of going for a website which is where the main focus is getting people to take action, the website is actually about, these are our reports, these are our scientists, these are our clever people who you really want to listen to if you want to know anything about this area. So the whole digital activity that at the moment is facing a nebulous consumer audience that is unidentified. There is a big shift from moving away from consumer audience towards more of a stakeholder audience. So that is where the change is in the international, in terms of that is going to be the activity that we are going to be focusing on in terms of digital activity. And then the other three functions are really mostly around supporting the global network, so all the 15 offices or 14 offices, in doing their digital stuff. So that is sharing best practice, knowledge sharing. There is also centralized evaluation, so that is where you can understand the data and the stats behind what people are doing, and sharing that and learning from each other. So it's kind of facilitating knowledge sharing and learning. Also sharing best practice. So the idea of let's try not make the same mistakes. It's about strategic support to global campaigns. So when there is a global campaign planning, we can support in terms of how you mobilize people digitally. But again, it's more like coordination, facilitation role, advisory role. So you work with your colleagues in national offices to kind of bring that plan to life. On the other side, the big shift there, which is about the digital activity of offices, the biggest shift really is that they need to start being responsible for their own digital operations in full. So they need to set themselves up technically in terms of the content management system they're using, databases they're using, email systems that they're using. And it's just basically about building that capacity so you can have a team or like two people who actually can take care of these things and run these things for the national office. So this solution is specific to WISPA. So it's an example, it is partially due to the organizational history and politics, internal politics that has been happening in terms of organization that was centralized is trying to decentralize, and there is a lot of issues around us in international being seen as pariahs, and so it is about trying to let go. So the organization is in that transitional period. So the way this was devised is to kind of get over that specific situation in this organization, so it might not work the same everyone else. And then this is your really foundation, which is around systems planning and evaluation and staffing, and I'll move on to that. I was taught this planning framework is something we use in Save the Children. It works really well. So I'm really passionate about it because if you think about that chaos that we saw before of like loads of things that are happening online, this framework puts really, really simple, simplifies that chaos and helps you prioritize. It's based on a traditional planning framework, so this is not specific digital thing, around owned, bought and earned media. Where owned media is the stuff you own, so it's your website, it's your email list, it's your Facebook page, it's your Twitter feed. So it's stuff that you have absolute control over in terms of brand and messaging. And you can fairly well measure it because you're in control of how you do your tracking and stuff. Bought media, as the name says, it's the stuff you buy, display, affiliate marketing, pay-per-click advertising, that kind of stuff. Really well, you can really measure it well because that's the business model. And then earned media is the stuff where that's where you really don't have control. So that is the love you get from social media and from communities where it is you don't have control over your message because you are actually. It is down to them how they communicate your message. So that is the area where you kind of have to let go, and kind of blogger engagement, social media engagement kind of falls under that. What's really, so these are the 3 digital channels that you as a digital team look after. And then you work with all the teams to figure out how digital across all these 3 channels can help them reach their objectives for their campaign or for their annual plan, depends on how they plan. Probably it's just like project to project basis. But, and what's really good about this framework is it doesn't mean that you have to fill in all these 3 columns, but it's important to ask the question. To say, so you know, how is there a value of doing a pay-per-click campaign here? What's the journey that people would take to get to your landing page or to your campaign, and how they're going to know about it? And I think it's I actually the reason why I really love this framework is because so many times you get briefs where people are saying, oh, we need a web page and we need a form and we need and it's like before we go into all that, how are people going to get there? Well, I don't know, from social media, it's like, no, we need to think about, that's the first thing I want to know, and then we can talk about what's going to be at the end of that journey. So I think this framework helps people understand the question, so it helps them really think about it. What's really also important here is the KPIs. So many times we get to do stuff without actually knowing why we're doing it and how we're going to measure the success of it. And it's a really good challenge to put to colleagues and to yourself, to your team, to say, well, fine, if we're going to be doing this, what are we trying to measure here? And even if you go through the process of asking the question and get to the answer that we cannot measure it, it's still better than not even talking about it. So at least you need to know what you can't know. And again, what's underneath all that is specialized stuff. It's a technology, and it's really the tracking system and web metrics, so it kind of is essential. And especially it's essential because when you ask people, when you ask people for money to implement kind of advanced digital strategy, they usually freak out. But with digital, you can have a really good set of stats which is how fundraisers always get loads of money, which are going to convince people that it's worth investing in it. What I'm trying to illustrate here is building your digital presence where brand can really, really, really help. So instead of every time you go to audience, you start from scratch and then you get to the peak and then audience forgets about it and then you start again and then the audience forgets about it. You try and build on every activity you've done. So if this was a campaign ask, this is a fundraising ask, this is another campaign ask. This is something that's really kind of good example of integration, where you can show. I mean, whenever I draw this for people, I could see the penny drop. So I thought, it's very simple. I think it's a really nice way of explaining to people of why you need to integrate. So why that planning framework is really important. That you have an oversight of what's going out to externally from the organization to the audience, so that they don't need to relearn about you every time, but they actually, it just kind of builds on knowledge of your brand and organization. So measurement evaluation is really important, and I probably don't need to bang on about that too much. I know you talked about testing a lot yesterday. And what I found is there is a lot of stuff that's based on absolute myth, where it is based on someone hearing something wrongly and then spreading that across the organization, and that becomes a fact. And it is a big challenge because the systems that we have are not necessarily good enough that you can get all the data that you know that you can collect this data by, in terms of actually making them meaningful and learning something from it. It's actually really time-consuming and complicated process. So, but still, you do need to start looking at how we're going to measure these things, setting up the systems to do it, which can take a very long time, because a lot of the stuff around this is also moving the organization with you. So, for example, one of the biggest challenges I had in Save the Children was to persuade them that we need to measure the percentage of overall individual income that's coming through online channels. They were really worried about it because a lot of the money online was coming from DRTV. And they were worried that if I say, well, this percentage comes through online channels, that is going to eat into their DRTV income the way they're reporting it to senior management, which is how they get sign-off. It's like, so basically it took me about a year to explain to them that I'm not suggesting that anything eats into anything. It's just another view of the same data. And they're like, no, but people are going to add it up and then it's going to look like there's more money. It's like, well, just tell them not to. But that kind of took about a year to get there. So identify the ideal set of KPIs and then set up the systems for tracking, which is what we are kind of trying to do in the... and the other point that I didn't make there, part of the organizational monitoring. If you have organizational monitoring thing, which sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, it's really important that whatever monitoring of your strategy you develop fits into that, because usually it's just, for example, it's just an add-on. So they say, oh, our organization monitoring is X, Y, and Z, so it's kind of income, you know, campaigning targets, whatever, and website visits. So you kind of need to, you need to actually make it a bit more, so instead of just going to the level of website visits, you actually go more to kind of top level strategy line, which is around reaching more people, or it could be around acquisition, or so you know, whatever is the top level. Structures and skills. It's just loads of questions, really. Who are your experts? So identify your experts and working with experts in terms of digital, so your digital experts in the organization. So that's the thing. It's I've done an audit across the Whisper network to kind of identify who are the people who are actually digital experts, and learn that there aren't that many. And if they are there, they're really junior, and they're really badly managed by people who haven't got a clue what they're doing. And it is, so even the potential capacity that they have is just stamped on. So there's actually no development there. There is something around the structure and decision-making process that comes out of it, which is where does the digital team sit? So again, what I found is, so most of the digital teams sit either in comms or fundraising, and usually that means that therefore their priority will be comms or fundraising. And there is usually a little war between comms and fundraising and that kind of stuff. So, so that kind of, sometimes, and I will go into more detail around structure, sometimes the structure can help resolve siloing. But actually, in my experience, is the planning thing that we talked about before that really, really helps, because you can restructure zillions of times. That in itself is not going to resolve the problem. There is something around decision-making process, and we've talked about this for years here, so you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It is this thing of like how decisions around campaigns made. A lot of the times you get campaign planned out, and then people come to you and say, right, now we want to mobilize people in this way. And then you start asking questions, and they're like, oh, well I don't know, well, we didn't think about that. And so it's the idea, kind of trying to push your way in so that input is given earlier on in campaign planning, whether it's a fundraising or campaign, so that you don't land with something that you know it's not going to work and it's kind of doomed to fail from the beginning. And sometimes that is, in some organizations, that is resolved by employing a senior person to kind of be able to go to all these meetings, or it could be just a matter of process. But that is, in the scope of the track that we are running here around digital leadership, that is probably one of the biggest challenges, really. Roles and responsibilities, a lot of time. It needs to be clear what the role of the digital team or digital person on a project is, because a lot of the time, in terms of sign-off, in terms of input, a lot of the time you're asked to input and then basically overruled, and that is what happens, especially if you're very junior. So that is where you basically just learn to not have opinions because no one cares. So so there is something around the and also. People love doing social media stuff. They love doing sexy things online, and they all want to do it, even if they don't have a clue. And it is that thing. It's like you know, if I went into a policy meeting and started questioning how they're developing the policy on a certain campaign, they would probably rightly look at me like I'm mad. But at the same time, policy people do come to you and tell you how to do a form on a website and that kind of stuff. So it is kind of developing that discipline to be very clear about roles and responsibilities, and to say, well, you know, on this project, this is what we are doing, this is what you're doing, and you know, this is obviously a deal scenario, and a lot of the times you will still have to compromise. But and then there is organization history and culture is really essential. I'm going to go into structures a little bit, and organization history and culture is actually what really decides what suits best your organization in terms of the different digital models you can have. So I have three here. This is a kind of centralized model of digital team, where you have a digital team that's kind of, I don't know if you can read it, but it's supporting other teams. So fundraising, individual marketing, supporter care, campaigns, teams, you know, other teams. So basically you have specialists in your team for email, for marketing, for data analysis. They're all sitting in a central team. Everyone else in the organization pitches in with their ideas about what they want to do. You do that planning thing. So, and that's how that model works. What's really good about that model is that there is consistency in approach. There is a consistency in the use of tools. There is also a fairly good overview what you look like digitally to the outside world, because you can clamp down on rogue microsites and rogue email lists that no one knows about. There is another structure which is hub and spoke, which is really popular these days, I've learned, but it is where you have a central team which takes care of processes, systems. So this is the team which says this is how we do things digitally here in this organization. But then there are kind of what I call satellites or spoke. So people in different specialisms, in different teams. So you have a digital campaigner in the campaigns team, or digital fundraisers in the fundraising team. This model is also really interesting because by owning a digital person, part of their role is to kind of spread the love of digital across the team and kind of help them learn more about it. It is more difficult to manage in terms of planning and like what your digital brand looks like. So it is much more difficult to clamp down on rogue websites, etc., etc. Although, because what we had in Save was we started off with this and then moved on to that, and I think that's probably a really good way of doing it, because most of the people here, I had some kind of involvement in recruiting, so I knew who the people were, and so it was a really good kind of team that would come to me and tell me about secret websites.
One slide, so that one is
centralized.
Centralized. So the central team managing all of the.
So we had loads of project managers here. I don't know if one of them, no, they're not here. So we had loads of project managers here who would then kind of go and chat. And then you have this thematic thing, which I think our colleagues from Greenpeace kind of do some stuff like this, but where you have a theme, which is, let's say, biofuels campaign or brand campaign or whatever, and then you pull in specialists from different teams. So they belong to a policy team or digital team, but then they are assigned to different projects, which is kind of another nice. So that is similar to Hub and Spoke because this team holds this is how we do things bit. So as I say, all these structures, yeah, all fine. But actually, and it really is very dependent on the organization and the history and the culture and the people, etc., etc. I really, really believe, I don't know if I said this already, that the planning thing is what makes much bigger difference. I've seen so many times digital teams being restructured, moved from campaigning to fundraising to campaigning to whatever, never resolved that many any problems really. And then on systems, there is something around data. And when I was talking to people about this, it was a question of data ownerships, and this is again a cause of many silos, which is fundraising team says we own data, campaign says we own data. Those two data sets are treated like two different data sets. There is an overlap. And there's always a fight who gets the email on what, and etc. etc. So the way we resolved that in SAVE, and it worked pretty well, we had an email group where we had people from campaigns, data, digital and fundraising who were planning a digital schedule, like email schedule, and segments. So they would do that together, and it works most of the times. It's not that often that you need to get to escalate up for the decision. So it is a kind of nice model. So there is again something around designing journeys that your data can deliver, and actually that your content can deliver. I started a project around introducing an eCRM into systems so we can have more personalized marketing to for supporters. So getting more digital data into the mix in terms of segmentation. And then there was someone else came in and they got terribly excited about that and then started introducing this project which was, and he was saying, and then we're going to be able to have 17 segments and then we're going to do this and that. And I said to him, listen, I can't still segment. I can't get a segment of people who have taken action in the last 6 months and send them an email. So I'm really not interested in 17 that you're talking about until you fix that first. So, and I think that is, there is something really exciting about data and you can do anything, but then you have to be realistic and actually design the journeys for your audiences based on what you actually have. The whole thing, I suppose, around this is it's so important that you think about it. So even if you think about it and you kind of draw it up and you say, yeah, and I can't do this because of that and that, it's huge. That is like a huge step forward than just kind of ignoring the issue and not thinking about it. And then analyzing and learning, obviously testing and planning based on testing. So user experience, I know that this sounds like, I keep banging on about this because it doesn't sound like a strategic point, but actually it is, and I'll tell you why. Because it is so important, especially for example, when you're talking to fundraisers, for them what it's about bottom line, and actually for the organization it's about bottom line. But these two stats is like recently have been published, which is around that because of bad user experience, people just drop off and don't donate. And we actually had a really good presentation from Ed Cooper, I think last year or 2 years ago, where he was kind of really, in a very, very compelling way, explaining how even if you had $1 million and really want to donate, for the life of you, you can't find the form where you can actually enter your data and donate. And this is so typical of so many organizations. So optimizing your donation, your user experience is really, really important. And actually in SAVE we did this. So we had this form, which was really confusing and a bit weird, and then tested it against this form and basically got 10% more income just purely from changing from that form to this form. Now, that is probably the cheapest project we ever did, but it brought in 10% more money. And obviously, it's not sexy, it's not shiny, We worked with fundraising on it. But that's the point that I really want to make, that actually something that is a little bit geeky, something that is a little bit about user experience, which does feel like not strategic, it feels like a little bit tactical, actually can make a big difference in terms of kind of organizational impact. And it is about kind of focusing people from shiny stuff to stuff that actually makes a difference. And then timeline and budget. So what we're doing on the Whisper strategy is each country office, because it's about decentralization, so I'm working with each country office for them to come up with a business case so that the financial investment, what are we investing in and how we're going about it, is specific to that country office. Because the technology solutions that they want to develop, the salaries they're going to pay are specific to are different for each country. So it's brilliant from the point of view of strategies not being done to them but with them. It's difficult from the point of view of getting the budget signed off on the top level, because they want me to tell them now how much this thing is going to cost over the next 3 years. The only thing I can give them is gut feel. So it is just kind of getting the senior managers buy-in that this is a process and they're not going to get all the answers right now, but and it's kind of managing their questions and trying to kind of give them as much information as they need. Well done. We are getting to the end of this. So be supporter-centric. So it's that myth busting. So make sure if something smells fishy, then do check it out, because a lot of the strategic decisions are based on myths, so are based on something that someone heard in a conference somewhere, and you know, it's not necessarily relevant to your organization, because that's another thing I've noticed. Each organization actually really is different in terms of supporters who you get in, so if something works for one organization doesn't mean it's going to work for the other, so you do need to test it and check it out. And then do the strategy with the organization, not to the organization. It takes longer, but it definitely pays off. And it is important that the strategy is, that's another thing that we realize. It's like, don't try to complete the strategy, especially when it's digital. If it's 80% there, that's fine to start implementing. Because if you start to do it 100%, you're basically just trying to respond to loads of specific questions that people are going to have, which are going to go out of date very quickly. So try to stay on the top level. And then strategic digital lead to drive the strategy forward is really essential. It's really important because especially around, and this is what we're going to be talking about today a bit more, but it is that thing of someone needs to drive this, and if anything, someone that people can trust. So even if they don't understand it, and even if they don't really know what's going on, they see that someone is leading on it, and they think, well, okay, if they think that that's the right thing, then I'll just kind of go ahead and you know, it is because you can answer a lot of questions, but actually it is a leap of faith at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it is about saying, yeah, we just need to do this. We just need to know to do this, and let's just go ahead. And also, the other point that I was making, it is really important to have that digital lead, because otherwise it's not going to be owned by the organization. So in some countries around the implementation of Whisper strategy, what we are doing is saying, well, actually, we need to employ someone first who is going to drive this through before we even do the strategy with you, because you haven't got that lead in the organization. And then use the framework. So as I was saying, I kind of think of it as buckets, and whenever I think about planning, I think, right, so this is the process, what are the skills I need, what is the training, what systems are we using, do we have tracking in? So basically just make sure it's like your list that you tick off bits from. And the last point, which is don't be afraid, change is happening, and it's never happening. And it's happening fast, and it's just a fact, especially if you're working in digital. So this is another challenge for digital leaders, which is a lot of the time you get entangled into actually organizational change management without organization really realizing it, and you haven't got the tools or knowledge to do that kind of thing. So that is another kind of thing that we're going to be talking about today, especially when you start poking around data and IT teams then feel really threatened, and that goes all the way up to finance, and that's when it becomes really difficult for you. So that's it.